Hi, everybody. I'm Julie Kurtz. I am the Executive Director for the Center for Optimal Brain Integration, and we love to give every child and every adult a voice and to grow humane beings. And one of the ways we do that is by shining a light on the work that people are doing across the nation, even across and around the world, which is BG Mancini, who I met on LinkedIn because I was so mesmerized with the work that BG does. BG is a neurodevelopmental specialist, advanced certified in functional medicine. She's the founder of the Brain Gut Institute, which we'll tell you more about later, and we'll refer into all of our we'll give you the links to all of these resources. And the creator of the Family Nervous System. 27 years of practice. She works with children and families to unlock their unique potential through biomedical, nervous system, and neurodevelopmental practices. So one of the things BG is going to talk to us about today is how integrated medicine sits at the intersection of healing from trauma and toxic stress, and how do we remove some triggers so that other interventions will work, especially how diet can impact the brain and body. So I'm going to hand it over to BJ to start doing her magic with this knowledge and wisdom. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Julie. I'm so happy to see you again. So you launched us into one of the great starting points, which is diet and how it impacts our body, right? So I have worked over the years both with adults, children, chronic illnesses. The last 15 years have really been focused on children with challenges, but also their families. Because at one point, parents would bring me their kids and say, they're having a tic, or they're not doing well in school, or their behavior is unmanageable. And what I noticed was working with children, they would start to get better, right? Because their systems are so beautifully resilient. And then when I started asking parents, hey, how are you? How's your nervous system? How are you? How's your sleep? How's your digestive system? And they would go from this to, oh my God, okay, this, and this, and this, and then I learned by working with people, apples don't grow from orange trees, first of all, right? So kids and parents often have very similar things going on. And so if we're able to look at, when we talk about how does food impact us, right? The microbiome, which is finally getting its day in the sun, right? It's something that we've talked about for a lot of years. There are very specific patterns, and the microbiome is let's say the communication signals, the different microbiota, they're called, that live in our gut. And their purpose is to help us digest food, neuromodulate our immune system. Our gut sends up 80% of our signals to the brain. 20% of our signals go down, and that is all connected through the vagus nerve. So why is that important? Because anxiety, depression, learning challenges, social interactions, all of those things have now been studied, and there are specific microbiome patterns that they've identified that are directly correlated to the increase in these unwanted symptoms.
And you mentioned about the vagus nerve. Can you explain to our listeners what the vagus nerve is?
Sure. So the vagus nerve is called the wandering nerve because it touches on so many of our organs, okay? And it's in control. The amount of things that it manages is too long to list, but I can tell you that if you think about the fact that it does modulate our digestion, it modulates the motility, the way that our bowels move, right? So if you think about a zebra running from a lion, what happens? It dumps all of its fluids, it has a bowel movement, it makes itself mobilized, right? So when we are in stress and trauma, a lot of people tend to get constipated, right? Well, that's almost like a shutdown inside of our body. And so then, of course, other people respond to that by having loose bowels, right? So these are symptoms. These are things that our body is telling us, hey, something is going on here. And that is nervous system. So Stephen Porges, the man who created the polyvagal theory, his work says, our physiological state, whether we are in a socially open, engaged, curious state, where we can have a great conversation, reciprocal, enjoy, go out in nature, use our head to look around because we're feeling open and safe, right? Then the next stage is a fight or flight state where we're constantly upregulated. We don't look around. We're hyper-focused. Our jaws might be tense. When we smile, it's not meeting our eyes necessarily. And this is a very simplified version of this. Of course, there's what's called blended states because we need to be able to move. And then there's shutdown, which is considered a dorsal state. So when we look at those in relation to how they functionally impact our life, right? So if we're in a state, we want to achieve this safety state, but if we have cues from our body that are coming in, let's say we eat food that creates stomach pain, or that stomach pain is saying, hey, there's inflammation or there's leaky gut. And all of those are telling our brain, hey, something's going on and I don't feel safe in my body.
It's so interesting what you're saying, and there's two things that stood out to me. This vagal nerve or the vagus nerve that runs through your entire autonomic nervous system. And we always talk about in our trainings how to stimulate the vagus nerve to either calm yourself or give yourself more energy, depending on if you're in fight or flight. But
Mhm.
I am curious as to your expertise on two things. How you
Mhm.
mentioned the gut biome and how it can impact our emotional states. And how can we take care of our gut biome through our diets? Like, what can we make sure that our kids or we're eating to reduce the chance of depression and anxiety and increase the chance of trauma strategies working that calm us, or even just other vagal nerve strategies, those somatic strategies that can help calm our nervous system? What are some things that you recommend?
So it's very much an infinity sign, right, for me. So if we were in a safe state, polyvagal theory states that we would not be as reactive to the world around us, the sensory input, or the interoceptive, which are the cues that our body is giving us. We would not be so overreactive, and that's here, right? But then if we take it into functional living, how do we reduce those things that might be sending us cues of danger so that we can then enter into that safer space in our physiology? And we do use things like vagus nerve stimulation. There is, of course, humming and singing, and some people do cold water plunges. The SSP is Dr. Porges's creation, the Safe and Sound Protocol, available through Unite. That's a wonderful tool. And then as far as, how do we access, right? So I sort of consider like, how do we drain the pool a little bit so that it's not so filled up, so it's easier for us to integrate these other tools that we're using, right? So one super easy one is called the microbiome mashup. You can find it anywhere on YouTube, lots of different recipes. Essentially, you take 25, 30 vegetables and herbs and things and throw it in a food processor, throw it in the freezer, and then a tablespoon or two a day. That helps to feed, because those fibers are what actually create your good food for your microbiome. And instead of doing probiotics, what that does is your body, as unique as your fingerprint, can then select how to use that material to grow its flora. Because otherwise, you're putting in a probiotic, which might be the wrong thing for you at the wrong time. And I have seen people have bad reactions.
Interesting. So, this microbiome mashup, can you repeat that? Because my brain was trying to figure out what that was. You take how many vegetables and you put them in a food processor? And how's that accessible for people who are busy with busy schedules or raising children who are making $12 an hour, let's say? Tell me about that accessibility.
Sure. First of all, you can make it just once a month, okay, and just throw it in the freezer and you break off a little piece. It can be cooked, it can be raw, it can be in a smoothie, it can be hidden in kids' foods. So that's the easy part. Getting enough of this, and we've played around with the different batches of it and all of that. And again, you can find all of this available for free, many free videos just by Googling microbiome mashup. It comes to about $25, maybe $30 for the whole month, because you're really only taking this much a day. So you end up, you're getting whatever kind of fibers and vegetables, throwing it in, laying it out in Ziploc bags, and you end up with enough for a whole month. I mean, tops to $25, $30.
And you're saying it's all vegetables, not fruit.
I mean, I use fruit skins sometimes, and sometimes I'll take like a little bit of an apple. But it is, sometimes people use fruit, vegetables, depends how you're going to use it. You know, so some people will make two different batches, one that they're going to cook, one that they might throw in a smoothie. You don't want onions in your smoothie. You know, so it's just sort of the different choices for flavors.
So this is one concrete thing that people can do is take Google microbiome mashup, and you're saying once a day, take a little bit of it that could be taken out of the freezer, and this will really help your gut and improve overall your well-being and give you a greater chance for those interventions that you're using through therapy or counseling or the teachers are using in the classroom to help children's nervous system feel safe. If you don't have access to a microbiome mashup, what do you recommend that we be feeding our children or ourselves in general before we move to kind of some of those other concrete strategies that we talked about earlier, like proprioceptive? But what do you recommend people eat for their diets?
So everybody, nutrition is where I started 30 years ago. And I have had so many iterations over what I suggest for people over the years. And it is very unique what works for each person. But really, I think the key part here is to be able to tune in and find out what our bodies are actually saying to us. You know what I mean? So if we eat something, if we've eaten a meal and we feel bloated, that is, even though people think that that's normal because so many foods cause that for them, it's really not, right? That could be indicative of SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. That could be indicative of a yeast, overgrowth. It can be anything, right? But what it's saying is something you've eaten and taken in has not digested well. And what happens, and this happens with children, anyone with a body, is that different bacteria grow when foods are not digested well, and then different signals get sent to the brain. So we have to remember that our gut microbiome is responsible for so much of what's happening. Here's the
Interesting.
way, Julie, here's the way I describe it. Ready? So at the bottom, let's picture the gut. That is our base, where we are interpreting and digesting the world. So we have signals that come through our somatosensory system, right? So when we hear sounds, our gut might tighten up. If there's a scent that smells threatening. So that's where the actual real-time digestion of the world is happening. Then we have this chemical cocktail that's come from that, and it might be hormonal. And so then we have a feeling, and then our brain story goes, okay, what's that feeling? Let me predict or look at the past, what happened before, what is that? And then we have a behavior that comes out up here. And this is where the diagnosis of children is happening. And I really, what I can say is that I believe that there is a pathologizing of children's behavior right now that is not behavior at all. And it's not just about their underlying needs as far as emotional, because I see when we take out certain foods that are triggering for them, when we give them weighted blankets, when we give them more proprioception, which is physical input through the joints, tendons, ligaments, and muscles, their behavior, they behave differently because they feel safer.
Yep. First of all, I want to close up this section on listening to your body, because one of the things we talk about is in the healing of trauma is bravery is listening to your body, and that there isn't a one size fits all. It's really listening to what works for your body, what isn't working for your body, and noticing that in your children as well. And then you mentioned this proprioceptive, which is another thing we talk about in our training, the deep pressure into the joints. But also, I will add the somatosensory, like the humming you said earlier, and the singing and the movement. And all of this is very, I think, what you're referring to, regulating to the nervous system or that vagus nerve, helping our bodies send a message that we feel safer or more relaxed. Is that a little bit of what you're saying?
100%, right?
Yeah.
Because if we don't know where we are in time and space, we will get cues of danger from our brain. And because of the reduced amount of movement and exercise that people are having, both children and adults, we are losing this sensory input that we're meant to constantly be having. And it's so that we can orient. Okay, here I am. I feel safe. Yep, everything's good. Whereas now people are having more auditory sensitivities, more visual sensitivities, things in the peripheral vision we don't necessarily recognize are triggering. Whoa, what's that, right? And a lot of times that's what kids are going through, and we don't know it.
It's amazing. You know, I want to close with something and see what you think. I am looking for the slide right now, but I learned there was an article that in kindergarten and younger classrooms, here it is, that
Mhm.
89% of a typical day for preschool or kindergarten children is spent in sedentary activities like sitting or squatting, followed by 8% of light activity, and only big body, vigorous movement, 3% of a typical day. I wonder, with your recommendation, what that would be like if we switch that to be more movement, music, big body movement, if we'd have fewer expulsions or dysregulations.
8,000%. The research supports it. It's not an opinion. So a lot of research is being done around this, and there are different programs out there that are integrating into some schools now. Someone actually recently just contacted me as a minor collaborator. She got NHS funding for a program where they're going to try it in schools, or they already do, but do a study on it. Because when there is movement, first of all, we learn better. That is established. Music, we learn better. But also we are designed, right? Interactive metronome, okay, is something that when there's timing, we are timed individuals. Our systems are on timing. Our heart rate variability is based on our breathing and how our interpreting the world is happening. Do we feel safe? Do we not? Changes our heartbeat, right?
You know, I'm going to close with one story that you're making me think of. In my own healing journey, I remember my one of my closest friends in high school invited me onto the cross country team. I went to an all girls school, but onto the cross country team, and I did it because I wanted relationships. You wanted to be with your best friend, and
Mhm.
from that day forward, I discovered exercise as a way to regulate my body and my nervous system, and it hasn't stopped ever since. And I feel like it's one of the greatest gifts. And I think we're all on this journey to continue getting, a higher level degree in ourselves, right? And
Mhm.
listen to our body in terms of how diet impacts us, movement can impact us. I just want to thank you for shining a light on this. And I want to make sure that people have access to your resources. So you are the founder of the www.braingutinstitute.com, but also the founder and program director of www.thinkvita.com. Maybe you can close us today with talking a little bit about these two programs.
Sure. So actually, Think Vita, our facility is fully built in Delray Beach. I am one of the partners there, and it's going to be working with both children, families, early addiction as well, and then the general public,
What state is
because
that in, Delray
that's
Beach?
Florida.
Florida. Okay.
I don't even think our website might be published. We somehow built the facility faster than the website, but we have, it's really quite beautiful, and it's a polyvagal and trauma informed space. And we are looking at everything, from this neurodevelopmental trauma informed place so that people can come and actually understand what is going on with them. People are so much more medically and emotionally complex in their presentations now than they were 30 years ago. And it really takes all of the things. I sometimes talk about when I'm doing speaking, 30 years ago, diet was enough to change chronic illness. It really was. I watched it. And then it was diet and supplements. And then it's diet, supplements, and lifestyle. And then now it's diet, supplements, lifestyle, sleep hygiene, vagus nerve work, social interaction, somatic, in order to really make this wraparound care work for us.
Wow.
And I will add, another takeaway that people can do, the one thing that you can do even sitting at your desk, if exercise, you have 3 kids, you have a job, you're busy, is you can do the isometric exercises, and they have found that that also gives BDNF in the brain. Okay, so that just means sitting and squeezing your muscles, squeeze your hands, reach your arms out and squeeze them. If you can only do 5-10 seconds to start, great, and then work up to a minute. Do your legs, squeeze your whole body. And it really, number one, it is so relaxing, but it is also giving you some of that proprioceptive input, and they have found and measured that it does give you some of the benefits of exercise.
Wow. And when you said BDNF, is that what you said?
A brain-derived neurotropic factor. Yes,
What
very
does that mean?
feeling good. It's one of the
Oh, feeling good. It's another
yes.
word for feeling good. I'm going to walk
Well,
around the world saying I BDNF, and they're
no,
very
well, it's a neurochemical that helps us, okay, to feel good. Yes.
wow. Okay. This has been such a powerful time with you. I want to thank you for giving us your time because time is so valuable. And I think so many people are going to learn so much from listening to you. Thank you so much. Is there anything you want to say in just a few closing sentences?
Just that I love your work, and I'm always excited to talk to you. And I really hope that that people can take away that healing is possible on every level at any given moment because our cells are designed to function and find homeostasis. So no matter where you are today, I would like to let you know that your body is working for you and not against you. It is constantly looking to help you feel better and finding out, doing a little investigation as to what might be pushing you in the wrong direction, and maybe adding, I call it the 5% rule, right? Where can I drain 5% of things that might be triggering me visually, what I'm watching, what I'm hearing, what I'm smelling, what I'm eating, and where can I wrap myself in some other tools, 5% increase, 10 minutes outside in the sun in the morning, wear blue blocking glasses for $10 at night, to help for my sleep hygiene. Can I get a weighted blanket if that feels good? Can I call a friend, phone a friend, So we're wrapping around with the 5% input and we're draining some of the things that might be stressing us, and we allow our body to find its balance again.
I love this. The cells, very down to the cellular level, want to heal and are
Yes.
constantly seeking and sending messages that we want to move in healthier directions. So thank you so much for that message, BG. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Good to be here.